Okay, so we have 3 absentees, so I do the recording. Yeah, okay. So EQ3 is a slightly more straightforward question, and that's why I want you all to at least start off with that first. All right, EQ3 first question basically explain internal and external causes of a trade deficit. All right, when they talk about a trade deficit, what are we referring to? Caleb, what's a trade deficit? Is this referring to balance of payment? This is actually referring to your BOT, your balance of trade. What is your balance of trade? Goods and services balance, which is your X minus M lah. Your exports of your goods and services minus your imports of your goods and services. So your export revenue minus your import expenditure. All right, of your goods and services. Okay, so we are asked about internal and external causes. So internal causes of a trade deficit basically are causes that are within control of the country or of the government. External is out of their control. Okay, so I think it's important you understand what this trade deficit is referring to, your X minus M. So what are some causes of a trade deficit that y'all can think of, that y'all can go on about? We don't talk about internal and external first, we talk about the causes. What are some causes? Huh? Why government expenditure? Okay, rising domestic income. How does rising domestic income? Is the term rising domestic income is more of a relative higher income. Higher income in a country relative to your trade partners. Okay, why is this so? Because with higher incomes, what happens? Your citizens will have higher purchasing power and they will buy more of your imports, and therefore import expenditure actually increase. Assume ceteris paribus, X minus M will worsen, okay, or fall. Okay, I'm interested to find out what Cash had in mind when she said government expenditure. Could you elaborate more on that? I just want to understand. And then? Yeah. Yeah, it's two different things. And government reserve, yeah, we don't take from your BOP, got nothing to do with your government reserve there. So it's two different things. Because the last lesson I thought I mentioned about your common mistakes that you all make. Budget balance versus your balance of trade or balance of payment. They are very different. This one, budget balance, is what the government has available. Right, and I think that's what you're referring to. You're not looking at this. When we talk about balance of trade, we're talking about balance of trade. Okay, your export revenue minus import expenditure. So it has got nothing to do with government spending and all those kind of things. Okay? All right? So please be very careful. This one is what the government has available. Budget balance is basically government revenue, okay, minus your government spending. All right? Of course, if this is greater than this, your budget balance will be in surplus. All right? And if this is smaller than this, then your budget balance will be in deficit because you're spending more than what you collect. Okay, so I think you need to be very careful and very mindful of that, the difference. Okay, so one possible is relatively higher incomes. Okay, what else? Appreciation of domestic currency. Okay, yeah. appreciation, your imports become relatively cheaper. So you buy more. Exports become relatively more expensive in foreign currency. So you actually sell less of them. X minus M will fall. Possible. Okay, what else? Was there a question? Was this? Wait. What happens if there's tariff and then? Why tariff will affect your? Who impose tariff? You impose tariff or other country? Okay, that one is more of policy already because we are talking about what causes your trade deficit. Yes, your protectionism and all can cause trade deficit lah. All right, but that one is more of policy to tackle the deficit as well. Especially if you look at US, what they are trying to do at this stage, the trade war with China and US, because of the balance of trade deficit that US is facing with China. That's why they impose your tariffs. Okay, possible. All right. What else other than these two? Yes, relatively higher domestic inflation rates. Your export prices increase faster than the other countries. Okay, and therefore your goods will be relatively more expensive. So these are the various causes. So you need to explain at least 1 to 2 internal and external causes. All right, so very straightforward. All right, so what is trade deficit? Trade deficit is basically your x minus m. This value is actually negative. And when is it negative? When your m is greater than your x, which is what they mean here. All right, causes here can be internal, can be external. Internal means it's within country, external means it's outside of the country. Okay, so this is the basic introduction. So as what we've discussed, higher domestic inflation rate, that's one of them. So this higher domestic inflation rate is an internal cause. All right, so when you have a higher relative domestic inflation rate, it will cause a trade deficit because rise in a country's inflation rate will cause exports to be relatively more expensive, imports to be relatively cheaper. Assuming demand here is price elastic, okay, X will decrease, your M will increase, and as a result, your X minus M will worsen. A trade deficit may result. All right. So this is the first one, and I think this one is what you should have in mind when you have such a question, because this is very straightforward. Relatively higher domestic inflation rate. The second one, you all mentioned relatively high income or your higher economic growth. Okay, that is also one of them. Higher rate of economic growth, relatively high rate of economic growth. So your national income increase, so you have higher purchasing power, and your imports are basically income induced. What do we mean by income induced? When I say imports are income induced, what do I mean? Increase in income. So increase in income, basically you buy more of your imports. Okay, because you're richer, you are better able to afford. Okay, and assuming that there are positive income elastic. So when income increase, you see a more than proportional increase in demand. And this will worsen the trade balance. Okay, so these are the internal causes. How about external causes? What are some external causes of trade deficit? That means your M is greater than X. External causes. Falling foreign income? The other way around, yeah, possible. That is one of them. Another one? Something y'all learn when y'all learn about trade. Yes, loss of comparative advantage. Loss of comparative advantage. Okay, you need to know what is comparative advantage. Basically, countries trade, okay, based on this theory of comparative advantage. So what is this theory of comparative advantage? That means countries will choose to specialize in goods and services in which they have a comparative advantage in. That means that they are able to produce this good with a lower up cost. With a lower up cost. All right, so with this lower up cost, it means that they can produce more of such goods, and therefore they should specialize in such goods. So countries like China will have comparative advantage because of their endowment of population. They have huge population. So labor intensive kind of production they can produce because they have comparative advantage in that. Those labor intensive type. Okay, so with that, all right, let's say up and coming developing countries like Vietnam or let's say India, okay, with the even lower labor cost than China, what China can produce at. All right, this can create that loss of comparative advantage. All right, and this is something that with globalization and freer trade flows, all right, emerging economies, the threat from these emerging economies can lead to a loss of comparative advantage. So what I just explained earlier, trade here, basically which country got a lower of cost they should produce, and as such, patterns of trade are likely to change as cost of production change. Okay. So just now I mentioned China, because of the abundant amount of labor and land, low-end manufactured goods, they have comparative advantage. Okay. All right. If other countries like China are able to gain comparative advantage, then this will mean that a similar product produced by foreign countries is now cheaper. And therefore, the domestic country will see a fall in export demand and a rise in import demand. Okay, leading to the trade balance to worsen. Yeah. It will make things, yeah, it will make that loss of CA more possible. And it's also possible, depleting resources. That's one reason for loss of CA. All right. Okay, so we conclude by saying trade deficits may arise for a variety of reasons, internal and external causes. Whether a country is more susceptible to trade deficits due to internal and external causes depend on the context of the country as well. Yeah.
If our internal cost is higher domestic inflation rate, and then external cost is like the other country, the inflation rate is higher, is that a very good argument? It's not, right?
Because it's sort of
Like
saying the opposite. Yeah.
So even though there are two causes, it wouldn't like.
Yeah, it will be counted as one actually. Because you're just flipping it the other way around.
The appreciation of currency goes under internal.
Depending on what caused the appreciation. If it's due to increased demand for the currency due to some reasons, then that could be external. Depending on how you explain that appreciation, what caused the appreciation. Because it could also be done internally, the appreciation. Let's say the country decide to undertake appreciation of currency, then that will be more internal than external. So it really depends on the cost. Okay. All right. So let's look at question B. Factors that the government should consider when adopting policies. Okay. So this question again, I'll spend a bit more time on this. Okay. So let's look at the question. Discuss the factors that government should consider adopting policies to tackle this problem. So this problem here is referring to your trade deficit. So when it comes to trade deficit, what are the policies available? Contractionary rate, or which one? Okay, fiscal or your monetary. Okay, basically, when it comes to this topic on BOP, what should the policies be classified as? Expenditure, reducing, expenditure, switching. So contractionary monetary and expenditure, contractionary fiscal, they are expenditure, reducing. The idea here is to cut back so that with lower income, they buy less imports. All right. How about expenditure switching? Okay, exchange rate and import controls. All right. Your supply side. Your supply side can also be under switching. Revenue. Sorry, one more time again.
Okay, first right now your X is 1 and X, right? So to balance it out, you want to decrease your X. So you can undertake an expansionary fiscal policy, right?
No, if you do that, they'll buy more imports. They buy more imports. Okay, the idea of doing this, okay, is with the idea of, okay, this one usually in the case whereby we are buying too much of your imports when your incomes are rising. Okay, and that's why there's a need to sort of control in some sense to help to achieve your goal of favorable BOP lah, because you don't have your deficit. This part here, exchange rate policy, is more of switching the expenditure. I mean, instead of buying imports, you switch them to buy domestically produced goods. Import control, same thing. Supply side is more of same idea. You want to produce better quality products back home so that people will choose to buy domestic rather than imports. So the idea here is, as the term suggests, reducing expenditure as well as expenditure switching. Not so much of the revenue part. The policies that we use. No, not the factors. These two are policies first. Correct. I never say this is the answer yet. This is not the answer. I'm just going through with you import controls. I'm just running through with you what are the policies first. So as you see, okay, in deciding which policy to choose, what kind of consideration did I actually put myself through? Size of, did I talk about size? I don't know. Okay, the cost. What's the root cause? What's the main problem? Because you need to solve the problem based on the cost, okay? Then Cash mentioned about size of deficit, okay? Domestic income falling, then you won't have the problem of this one. Rising, that's why you need a contract, what? Correct? Okay, so cost definitely is one of them. So this is your answer lah. Because most students, when they see this question, they blabber on about their various policies. Okay, which is not the focus of the question. The focus of the question is really the factors. And one factor is, of course, the cost. Other factors such as size of deficit. What else? Sorry? Oh, nature of economy, budget size, etc. Okay, budget available. All right. Okay, so these are various considerations. All right. If you recall your decision making framework, okay, your decision making framework, what are the factors that we consider for that? Benefit, cost, constraints, Okay, the intended, wait, sorry. What else? Other than these three first, wait, we talk about intended. Information, perspective. Is there one more way? I think I said right, 5, huh? Is it 5? Cost, benefit, constraint. It's 5 of them, right? Is it? Okay. Alright, so let's see how we actually fit this in. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you or what I'm trying to advocate is for you to, every time you have a factor style of question, discuss the factors, discuss the consideration, those type of question. I think very importantly, you need to understand that what they are trying to get you to do here is to do a decision-making style of question. It's a decision-making question essentially. Not really compare, because now you see, discuss the factors that they should consider. The comparison is done at the evaluation portion. But what I'm trying to tell you here, because they ask you to discuss the factors, so this is in essence a decision-making question. Although they don't make it very explicit to you, or some of you might not see it that explicitly. So that's why I'm telling you, you need to also formulate your answer based on this. And how do I apply that? Okay, we mentioned we need to find out what's the root cause. Root cause fall under which one? Information, yes. I need information. Information such as what's the cause of the problem. Does it make sense to you? It makes sense, right? Okay, what else? Size of deficit? Not all. This one is size. Actually, also magnitude. There's size and magnitude actually. Nature of economy can be under constraint. Yes, larger position also under here. These two. Most of the time. Okay. Sorry? Cost and benefit also. The intended, unintended part also can come in. The intended, unintended part. What's the cost? What's the benefit? You can use it here if you want. How do we use perspective? Assumptions. Assumptions like what? Okay, how do we use perspective? What do you mean by perspective? Okay, you talk about import controls. Import controls is also a form of protectionism. Okay, US, China. US imposed 25% tariff on China goods. China also planned to impose the 25% back on US. So how do I fit this part in about perspective? Because discuss the factor that they should consider when adopting policy. So if I want to adopt this policy, what should I consider? Whether they will actually retaliate or not. So can we fit that in? It's possible. And you can write quite a bit on that. Also, we need to also consider perspective because when we undertake certain policy, there could be intended or unintended consequences that come about on your various stakeholders. So for example, in the case of, let's say, import controls or protectionism, when you want to actually undertake protectionism, okay, you also need to consider whether your trade partners, will they actually retaliate? Will they retaliate? I think the answer is likely that they would have. Alright, so that's something that you also want to highlight and consider because if you ask me how do I put in perspective, that's how I put in. Okay? Alright. So answer essentially the framework you can use this. Alright, I'm just advocating for it because I think it's quite clear, quite easy for you to frame your ideas and everything using this framework. Otherwise you've got nothing to work with, you also don't know how to start. So I think quite clear the question here, factors that government should consider. Alright, the policies to tackle this problem, the trade deficit. Alright, so what are some of the various factors? Okay, so basically you see what we can do in the introduction, we can talk about overview of possible macro policies, which was what I did with you. I just asked you what are the policies before I talk about the factors. So you can choose to use this or you can choose to use this outright. You can use this outright. I'm not saying you cannot use this outright. But I thought this framework will help make things clearer to you so that the learning can be more transferable. When you have other type of questions, you can then also see and consider how we use this framework to answer them. Okay, so maybe 2 to 3 factors to consider, and then evaluate, explain how far these factors may influence and which one perhaps you rank as the most important factor. All right, so introduction, they can use either expenditure reducing or expenditure switching. All right, I think the idea of your policies, you just make it known. You don't have to go in great detail elaborating the whole how the policy work and everything. It's more of just highlighting the use of your policy and what the intention is. Okay, protectionism, as we mentioned, supply side policy and devaluation are also expenditure switching policies. So in deciding on the choice of macro policy, they often will consider whether they address the root cause, the nature of the economy, and the unintended consequences. All right, so root cause of the problem. So if it's due to a loss of comparative advantage, then I think you should know down here, outright, you need to use supply side policy. Because if it's due to root cause, if it's due to loss of comparative advantage, you cannot go and do contractionary because it's not going to help you. No point you do contractionary fiscal, contractionary monetary policy. Okay, because it does not address the root cause of the problem. Rather, if you actually use your supply side policy, go and do investment, R&D, all these help to increase competitiveness. Okay, resultant lowering of cost of production or increase in quality can help you regain your comparative advantage, thereby boosting your export revenue and reducing its import expenditure, enabling it to correct its trade deficit. One limitation here, though, is that the results are not always guaranteed. And results are only usually seen in the long run. Just briefly only, because down here we talk about because we're giving an example of the consideration. So if it's in this case here, what policy you then advocate for?
If you're talking about root cause,
yeah,
would it be better to give an example of one root cause and evaluate it out?
Yeah.
Or give 2 root causes?
One is enough. Don't spend too much time on it. Because you need to bring in other factors to consider as well. So this limitation is because we are highlighting in this case here, just briefly only, yeah. All right. Therefore, deem it necessary to adopt protectionism and other policies. Such firms may become complacent. So down here is talking about may therefore deem it necessary, at least in the short run, to adopt protectionist measure, giving time for industry to restructure and develop. However, such firms may become complacent and fail to develop your comparative advantage. So in this case here, it will not be suitable to solve if it's due to a loss of comparative advantage. A trade deficit will persist when the protectionist measures are removed. Yeah, the way the answer is framed, but the idea is here about the root cause. Root cause, then you use the policy to. Then you explain which policy the government should consider. Because it is due to the root cause, then you decide which policy, and then you can fit in the policy as an example to show how in this case here, this policy is better or that policy is better. All right. Okay, unfair trading partner, dumping, then you have to use your protectionism.
This is like
a few examples. Yeah, just choose one. Okay. Then factor 2 is your nature of economy. All right. So nature of economy, for small open economy without natural resources, right, dependent on foreign market for sale of its product as well as imports of raw material. Which country is this referring to? Singapore, quite clear cut here. So engaging in protectionism might invite retaliation, and domestic country would suffer a reduction in their export revenue, which will undo any positive effect. Okay, so your trade balance might actually worsen. Okay, if you engage in protectionism. So trying to show you how in these various instances, the use of certain policies may be useless or may not be very helpful. So that's why they say these are important considerations. So more crucial for small open economy to improve their export competitiveness with the use of supply side policy. They need to continually create external demand through maintaining competitiveness of exports with R&D and innovation efforts to improve on quality and attractiveness of its exports. So giving further example, to spend on R&D, to focus on training, improve productivity. All right, large economies do not have such constraints, and therefore they are better able to depend on domestic demand, domestic production, and domestic engines of growth. All right. Factor 3 is your unintended consequences. Okay, and actually, we are talking about your controlling fiscal and monetary policy. So while the use of it can help to improve your trade deficit, but then there's also this problem about the deflationary effect of your economy, because it influences the level of AD through increase in income tax and reduction in your government expenditure. So all this will actually reduce your import expenditure, but it runs the problem of actually reducing your income, resulting in your cyclical unemployment. All right. Okay. Similarly, when we talk about protectionist measure, there's also these unintended consequences. Okay, whereby your fall in import expenditure will mean a reduction in the export revenue of your trade partner. And all this causes a fall in the AD and hence national income of your trade partner. Right, this will in turn reduce the trade partner's expenditure on your exports. And when this happens, your RNY will decrease, reducing the positive effect of your protectionist measure. Okay, and then the last slide, you just evaluate and conclude. Basically, multiple factors need to be taken into consideration simultaneously. The more comprehensive set of factors considered, the less unintended consequences or the more effective set of policies will be. If you only consider nature but not the root cause, may have limited impact on correcting the trade deficit. Timely and constant review of policy may be needed. As such, weights of factors in influencing of policy may also change over time. Domestic consumer and firms may not be so reliant on imports, but are now heavily relying on imports. Hence, import restricting policies may become more effective in reducing trade deficit. So really looking at the consideration of factors and highlighting about the fact that you will need to constantly review and look at some of these factors over time. Because over time, your nature of economy could change, and therefore, how much attention to the factors you pay will also be a factor as well. Okay, any questions? No, I'll give you all a 5-minute break. I'll move on at 2:13, and I'll move on to EQ3. Sorry, EQ2, not EQ3. 5-minute break. Okay, let's look at the question 3, EQ3. Sorry, EQ2. Okay, EQ2. EQ2 slightly a bit challenging because the question is on circular flow. And explain how government's decision to run a budget deficit could affect the current account balance of a country. What is the current account balance? Current account includes your BOT, your unilateral transfers, one more, income transfers, income balance. Balance of trade is your goods and services balance, right? So current account is 3 lah. Okay, I just briefly explain what they are again, in case you don't quite know what they are. BOT is your X minus M. Okay, I think you need no further introduction. Unilateral transfers, what are some examples of it? And it's one-way direction. Because this word uni is one way. Outside come in, inside go out also lah. But basically this is measuring your unilateral transfer, whether it's going out or coming in. So examples such as next time when you go overseas and you go over there to study, your parents might have to mail you money for your day-to-day, your pocket money allowance, that kind of thing lah. They transfer the money to you lah. Yeah, so this transfer here is considered as a unilateral transfer lah. They have to TT transfer to you lah. And this TT transfer to you will be considered as an outflow. Telegraphic transfer. You think overseas got POSB? London got POSB? Huh? How much of the hard cash can you bring? How much? So you know that when you go overseas, you need to declare if you bring in an excess amount. Yeah. Security wise, someone just mark you at the airport, or even before you reach London. Let's say before you even reach London, you got robbed, or your luggage got transferred elsewhere. When I do what? When you bring the money across. It's not because you're bringing the money with you. It's with you. It's not transferred out to somewhere else. Okay?
What if you withdraw from your bank, then you bring your wallet, then you put inside the bank?
Yeah. Then it won't be considered here because you never go through the normal transfer. Just one way lah. Okay. I mean, this unilateral transfer, the idea here is that typically when you send money across, you expect some goods or services in return. But in this case, one country to another country. So when you go to Australia, when you go to London to study, your pocket money that your parent pass on to you, okay, I shouldn't use the word mail. Okay, your pocket money that your parents send over to you, that is considered as unilateral transfers. Huh? You can do it if you are willing to take the risk. You can do it, but at the end of the day, yes, it's considered as a unilateral transfer. Okay, another example of this unilateral transfer, when Japan had their tsunami, all right, governments across the world, they also send money to Japan as donation. So another form of your unilateral transfers here are your donations to overseas due to some mishap or some things that happen. Basically, the idea here is, okay, what your BOP wants to measure is the transfer of your money as well as goods and services, the flows, correct? So this unilateral transfers measures this movement of your funds, of your money. All right, and take note, these unilateral transfers here are just one directional. You send over, there's no goods or services that come back in return. So this one is part under your unilateral transfer. Okay, so example, like I said, when you go study or work or what, then you send your money back, or your parents send your money to you. All those are considered as unilateral transfer. Philippines, a lot of maids coming to Singapore to work. Indonesia as well, a lot of maids coming to Singapore to work. When they send the money back home, that is considered as unilateral transfers. That's not their income balance. That one is under unilateral transfer. Income balance, I'm going to explain it now. Okay, thanks for asking. All right, so income balance here, we are talking about. Okay, we are talking about things such as dividends or even profits. Yeah, I thought so.
What about like foreign company their profit back?
Yep, then this will be outflow from Singapore's income balance.
So that is not revenue, that's like one way there.
Oh, but that is under income one. That one is due to profits one.
But in the mid only then
But that one is more of they send back as pocket money and all allowance. This one is between firms
Also one is a person.
That one is person to person
So unilateral transfers are government. Whereas income is just produced.
It's between firms now. This one is they send back to headquarters, etc. Alright, dividend I thought I explained last lesson, right? About Apple, about share, about StarHub, yeah, all those shares after that they send, yeah. So all these are part of your current account. And of course, current account, we don't care about unilateral transfer and the income balance as much. We focus on this X component. So essentially what this question is asking you about is how, using circular flow, how were the decision to run a budget deficit? What do you mean by running a budget deficit? What is running a budget deficit? Increase G, decrease T. Increase G, decrease T. When we say running a budget deficit, it's like a fiscal policy. You are deliberately increasing G and reduce T so that you can reach a budget deficit. All right. So the idea here, if you look at the circular flow, your G increase, your T decrease. What will happen to my X minus M? That is what the question is asking you all about. So, okay, so let's look at it. Let's look at the impact. So I think the question requirement I break down here, I will look at the circular flow. So this is your circular flow. This is your circular flow. You remember your circular flow? This one is your J injections. These are your withdrawals. Okay, the W just disappeared. Okay, W, okay. Okay, so what happens here? So this is my circular flow. Initially at equilibrium, W and J, they are equal. They are equal. W and J, they are equal. So now the decision to run a budget deficit here, it means that I increase G, I decrease T. So I increase G, I decrease T here. So what happens? My J now becomes greater than W. Then you just explain what happens next. So J greater than W. So this signals to the firms that they need to produce more. Produce more, they hire more, and then they pay out more factor income. And they spend more, then S, T, M will increase until you reach an equilibrium. This one no multiplier effect. This one got no multiplier effect. Multiplier effect is only for AD. This case here got no multiplier effect. So your W will equal J again at a higher level of income. And at the higher level of income, your X minus M, what happens to X minus M? Your X minus M, what will happen? This one will increase, right? Assuming X remains ceteris paribus, overall it will decrease. Draw diagram, explain everything. We assume ceteris paribus. It will increase, but the extent of the increase, this one should be higher. Questions? You don't get it. So circular flow, you remember, is your J and your W. They are equal initially. So now this one increase G. This one decrease T. So increase in G. So this one will transmit. Okay, and it will signal to your firms that they need to produce more. In order to produce more, your firms will have to hire more factors of production from your household. And when they hire more factors of production, they pay more factor income. With higher factor income, this group of people, they will consume more. Because more factor income, they buy more goods and services, higher purchasing power. They allocate more to savings, allocate more to taxes, allocate more to import expenditure. And this cycle will carry on until your W equals J again. Your W will always be the one chasing after the J. Alright? That's the circular flow. That's the idea of circular flow lah. So W will increase until W equals J again. So the impact on your X minus M here, because the question here is not focusing on this. Although we answer this, but the main focus is really on this. What happens to my X minus M? Because they ask you what happens, how will it affect your current account balance? You know that with higher income, as we mentioned, imports are income induced. With higher income, import expenditure will increase. This one we assume ceteris paribus, assume it stays the same. The X minus M will actually worsen, decreasing. That's the answer. Okay? Okay? So that's what we do lah, in order to answer this part A. Alright, so basically provide overview of what a budget deficit is. When they say budget deficit here is a deliberate effort, deliberate attempt to use FP, expansionary FP. Yes. Yes, at a higher income level, right? Because your W follow your X minus M worsen, because with higher income you buy more imports. The imports will rise more. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Relationship between budget and current account balance. Overview of circular flow. Draw your diagram. Use the WJ method to explain how this will affect the income, the impact on your current account balance. So how you go about doing so? Okay, so budget deficit, let's explain what budget deficit is. When your government expenditure exceeds your, basically it's a expansionary fiscal policy. No, it's to expand the economy, to stimulate the economy. You see? It's a country with both fiscal and balance of payment current account deficit. So they might want to run a budget deficit. When they say I run a budget deficit, it's basically an expansionary fiscal policy. It's signaling to you that you want to increase G, decrease T. You want to stimulate the economy. So this budget deficit here is an expansionary fiscal policy. Not that they try to make is that is the effect. Yeah, they want to boost your W and they want to boost your W and J. Yeah, they want to boost the equilibrium level of income. Your W and J, that's the transmission effect. Your M will increase. X will assume to remain constant. X will increase, but maybe X might just increase lesser than the extent of your M. Yeah. It's the transmission effect. Because you have more income, so you have more to save, more to pay taxes, more to import. Yeah. It will increase, but the extent will increase not as much because it's circulated. More money go into savings, more money with the banks. The banks have more money to lend out. So there will be more investment. But the extent of this increase in investment is not going to be greater than the increase in saving because there's that flow, the transmission effect. Not that it will always be, but it depends on, because this is a circular flow. It will circulate, first round, second round, third round. There's some that goes out in terms of withdrawals, so it depends on because it's not going to be the full sum that goes straight on it. Because if it's the full sum, it will just keep on circulating. Yeah. W and J, the value is not so much determined by your IG and SCM. The increase, because we're talking about increase by, the increase and the decrease is the change. It's not the absolute value. Correct?
In the end, AD is to increase.
By right, AD will increase, yeah. Yeah. It's okay, what? It's okay for that to happen. Alright. Okay, you look at how to explain first, maybe later then I elaborate. Maybe you still don't see the whole thing because you haven't seen the explanation. So basically, this is your budget deficit, this is your current account balance, your current account deficit. So down here, it will cause changes in the national income, which in turn affects your current account balance. Okay. All right, so the body paragraph, your circular flow, you explain what your circular flow is. So fourth sector, open economy. There are withdrawals and injections into it. Firms pay household. This one is just explanation. And then households, they use a portion for it to buy domestically produced goods. Okay, they also save, they pay taxes, they buy imports as well. Down here, save, pay taxes and buy imports. So this portion is the withdrawal. Withdrawal will re-enter as injection. All right. When total withdrawal equal total injection, the national income will be in equilibrium. Only then will the planned expenditure be just sufficient to buy all the final goods and services. No tendency to change the level of production. Okay. So this part here is going to explain it. So when government move from budget balance to a budget deficit, deliberate move, expansionary fiscal policy. So this will in turn lead to deterioration of your current account. Why? All right, because when an economy is in recession, they may employ this one by increasing spending on building new roads. Okay, so as G increase, there will be a budget deficit. All right, and there will be disequilibrium in the economy because W less than J. So all this will cause AED to exceed the national output. So firms will increase output and they will hire more factors of production. So this part I hope you translate it on the diagram. Okay, so these are your J, these are your W. This is S, T, M, I, G, X. Okay? So when G increase, T decrease, okay, this signals to the firm that, hey, I need to produce more goods and services. And in producing more goods and services, they will need to hire more of your households, more FOP. So now your factor payments or your factor incomes, there's an increase. So this increase in factor payment, factor income goes into your households. Households have more to spend on consumption of domestic goods and services. Part of which goes to savings, part of it goes to taxes, part of it goes to import expenditure. All right, and whatever goes in here, okay, the bank now will have more to lend out for investment. Government has now more to spend, and this one more of your exports that they're selling. Okay, so all this will basically create a cycle because originally W was equal to J at initial equilibrium. Right now W becomes less than J. And because of this, your firms they are producing more and more and more. So the amount that because this is dependent on your MPS, MPT, MPM. So for every $1 increase in the factor payment, it really depends on your MPC, your MPS, your MPT, and MPM. If not the whole thing end up should be equal to 1, right? Okay, let's assume this is 0.3. Let's assume this is 0.3. This is 0.3. This is 0.2. This is 0.2. Okay, what does this mean? This means that for every $1 increase in factor payment, 30 cents is spent on consumption, 30 cents spent on saving, 20 cents spent on taxes, 20 cents spent on imports. So just now I mentioned the thing will keep circulating because now there's additional 30 cents. Let's say $1,000 increase, then there will be $300 increase here. So this $300 increase will come here, and this will circulate again. Because what happens here, you have, let's say this was initially $1,000. This one bring in an additional 300, this one additional 200, additional 200. So right now your increase in J is not full 1,000. It's actually 322, which is about 700. So this one will go through another round. 0.3 of 700, this one will be how much? Is it 210?
So basically,
You will just keep on circulating. Yes, sort of like a multiplier.
Why does we use of it?
Yeah.
why does MPC not get? I mean, why does the consumption not get?
Because that one goes straight back to the firm.
Then from there,
Because this IGX STM.
so it's not consumption is not part of the withdrawal or the injection.
No. It's directly to the firm. It's directly back to the firm. So that's why I said not the full sum goes back in. Because there's this additional process that keeps on circulating until the end, which is akin to your multiplier effect. Okay? Alright, so yeah, households that receive more income, they'll spend a portion of it on your locally produced goods, which are consumption, S, T, and M. So this will create the round and round and round, which is the round and round that I'm trying to show you here. Alright, and when that happens, this is what we see. So increase in output for second round will be smaller than the previous one because of all these leakages. Okay, so firms will again experience a fall in inventory, prompting them to increase production. It will cause another increase in income. And it will just keep on repeating itself. Repeat until your injections equal your withdrawal. All right, and with every round of national output increase, imports rise, and thereby it worsens the current account balance. So if the current account is in the BOP, was previously in the balance position, with an increase in import expenditure due to an increase in national output over several rounds, all else being equal, current account will now deteriorate to a deficit. How much it deteriorates is ultimately dependent on your MPM. Okay. We didn't assume that to be the case. Yeah. Okay. Previous part. With every round of national output increasing, imports rise, thereby worsening the balance. Yeah. And this is your answer for part A. Okay. Every time there's a circular flow question, students tend to have difficulty doing it because they don't quite understand the framework enough. But if you know how to do it, actually circular flow very easy to score. If you know lah, remember I told you all to go and memorize the circular flow and all. If you know how to memorize, you know how to explain, that's how you get the marks. It's very easy if you just bang on circular flow because they have ADAS, if not circular flow, these two frameworks to test you. All right, and most times they test you on ADAS. Circular flow, A level I think only come out once or twice in the past. In the past, it came out once or twice. All right, so I don't know lah. All right. Okay, I'll give you all a quick 2-minute break, and then I'll resume with the last question. So 2:42, 2:42. Then I'll resume the last question. Okay, 2 minutes are up. Okay, let's resume. Okay, and then after that you can go off. All right. To what extent should US and Singapore government be concerned about current account imbalances in their countries? So question here, current account imbalances. What do we understand by this term, current account imbalances? Deficit as well as your surplus. Okay, so Singapore, we have surplus. US, they have deficit. So to answer this question, there's 4 parts. They should be concerned about deficit. They should not be concerned about deficit. They should be concerned about surplus. They should not be concerned about surplus. So 4 parts to your answer. Singapore and US, yes. Yeah. All right, because that's how the question is. And part B, most times than not, they have 4 parts sometimes. So each one, 1 point, 1 point, 1 point, 1 point, good enough. Okay, my slides, I have about 24 slides on that. Yes, because right now I'm on page slide 12 out of 36. No, you just have to, because there's a number of reasons. So I'm just highlighting it first before I show you. You don't have to have all. It's not required to have comprehensive. You just need 1 point for why they should be concerned, why they should not be concerned, for deficit, why they should be concerned, why they should not be concerned for surplus. Yeah, correct. So you need to manage your time very carefully. Okay. All right. So first part, I think this is the one that I just mentioned earlier. They need to be concerned. They may not. That should be may not. There's a typo. Oh, sorry, they may not. Yeah, sorry, not typo. This one is deficit. This one is surplus. This one is deficit. Yeah. Okay. So 4 parts to answer. So introduction, basically talk about the deficit and surplus briefly. All right, you need to look at the causes, the initial state, and the nature. So assumption here is due to trade imbalances for simplicity reasons. Because current account, you have your BOT, you have your income balance, you have your unilateral transfer. So down here, you assume that it's due to trade imbalances. So the answer can just touch on the current account portion. So this is number one. Okay, those that are blue one, that means it's a new point. So US government should be concerned about current account deficit. Why? What happens when you have a current account deficit? What are the consequences? Okay. And then consequences? For, yeah. You use the reason. It will affect other macro goals, one of which, okay, your EG, your economic growth. Okay, your economic growth, your real GDP to be a level that is lower than your full employment output. Deflation? Deflation, why deflation? Okay, wait, let's look at this first. US firms may be less competitive than your foreign firms, especially in low-end manufactured goods. This may be due to low quality of your US goods. When this happens, consumers will import high-quality goods as substitutes. So demand for imports will be high, import expenditure also high. Okay, so all this will mean that your X minus M will be a negative value. And instead of buying domestic goods, your consumers are buying imports. So your domestic producers, they are not benefiting as much. They won't invest as much. You won't have as high a consumption level as well. All right, so this is one possible problem. Okay, a deterioration in the current account will lead to internal imbalances. And if it's persistent, all right, this also means that there will be persistent demand deficient unemployment. However, economic growth of US not as dependent on external demand due to the large domestic market. Net exports make up a less significant portion of AD for US as compared to countries like Singapore. So impact here may not be as severe. Okay. Furthermore, opening up of a trade deficit leads to an increase in supply and increase in demand for countries' currency. All right, and for US, because they are on a free floating, this will lead to a depreciation of the exchange rate. Households will then face rising prices of its imports, which may further contribute to lower material as well. They might face rising unit costs because of the depreciation of their currency, resulting in cost push inflation. But again, due to size and availability of natural resources, not as dependent on imported inputs, so this lessens the impact of the imported inflation. So you talk about the negative consequences of a deficit, and then you explain why, despite all this, for US, especially the nature of the economy is not so much of a problem. Huh? Yeah. Earlier, just one, yeah, that one can. This is another one. Okay, it could lead to lowering of future material as well. Okay, because import expenditure higher, your households are enjoying a higher level of material living standards, likely to be financed by borrowing from the trade partners. And all this needs to be returned. So household as consumer would need to reduce future consumption. And this will lead to future material standard of living to be suffering. Moreover, if the deficit is big, country is not able to fulfill its external loan obligation, it can result in a debt crisis. Lenders stop lending or agree to continue to lend but very high interest rate. This will increase the external debt burden and further lower your future living standards. This is point number 2. Alright, about why they should be concerned. However, while the deficit phase is significant, status of the dollar as the world's reserve currency, alright, is still there, and countries will still continue lending to US. So no need to worry about the part about not lending. Point number 3, it could lead to a financial crisis and hence adverse effects on the macroeconomy. Trade deficit is big and persistent, financial investors lose confidence. So they pull out their investments. Downward pressure on the country's exchange rate. So US dollar will depreciate. Alright, and through the depreciation, further loss of confidence will discourage FDI, contraction of economy. However, as explained earlier, dollar is not at risk of significant depreciation because it's the world currency. Alright, so given strength of the US economy, only a collapse of the dollar will have a significant effect on FDI. Okay, so these are reasons why they should be concerned. Okay, Singapore should be concerned about current account surplus. Current account surplus can lead to demand pull inflation because your X minus M is increasing. All right, and this could lead to AD increasing. All right, and if there's a persistent surplus, okay, this can lead to the demand pull inflation. Central bank will intervene. It will sell domestic currency and buy foreign currency. Okay, this will lead to further expansion and hence inflation if you are near full employment. All right. It leads to adverse feedback effect on exports in the future. Invite retaliation because this is sort of like the beggar, thy neighbor. The effect. That means you if you are the only one having surpluses, everyone else is suffering from deficits. There will come a point in time whereby because how you get your surpluses is basically yes, all right, they have been borrowing from you, correct? So there will come a point in time whereby you reach breaking point, they cannot pay you back anything more. Then you are just left by on your own. So you have only all these so-called beggars as your neighbors. This situation. It's not sustainable across time. That's the idea. Alright, one country's trade surplus is another country's trade deficit. So this causes contraction of the latter's AD. Alright, and it will induce them to cut back on imports. Will eventually suffer falling exports because that country, the one that has been sustaining your surplus, alright, will eventually contract and see the national income falling. And this effect will worsen if the trade partner engages in retaliation measures like protectionism. Alright. Size here of Singapore's economy, the impact will not be so strong because we are so small. Alright. Persistent surplus here also limits increase in material living standards. Alright, it suggests the country become a net lender and this could lead to inflow. Households are foregoing current consumption. So how much your standard of living actually increase is also questionable because you have surpluses at this point in time, but a lot of this is lent out. So your living standards are not rising fast at all. Okay. US government should not be concerned because of the cost. If you have been importing a lot of capital goods, you know that in future, alright, these capital goods can bring about your more goods and services. So it's not so much a concern for you now. If the reason why you are having a trade deficit is due to you importing your capital goods, your machines, etc., because of the benefits that it bring across over a long period of time. All right, and it may fall over time as they substitute imports for locally produced US goods. All right. The type of exchange rate the country operates on. Country like US operates on the free floating exchange rate. So if there's persistent current account deficit, the supply will be higher, and this will lead to depreciation, and this will help to balance out because the imbalance will be resolved over the long term. Because if you're having deficit, by the very fact of how your free floating exchange rate works, your currency will depreciate, and through the depreciation, the imbalance will be resolved. Because when you depreciate your currency, exports become relatively cheaper, imports become relatively more expensive, so this deficit will more or less be balanced out. For Singapore's case, same thing. Alright, due to the exchange rate, Singapore is managed float. So in Singapore, the country actually intervened. Sorry, not country. The central bank actually intervened. And through this intervention, Singapore will have higher amount of reserves in our foreign currency. Alright, so this will alleviate any concern of overly strong currency. Alright, I know it's a lot. But this one is from which school ah? Is it a school? VJC, yeah. Is it last year? Is it last year? 2017. I don't know why this question is chosen, but yeah. Yeah. You can choose not to do this. Yeah, prelim you got 3 questions to choose. 2. 4 questions ah. You need to do 2. Yeah. Okay, I think the rest I leave it to you to go and read lah. I know it's too much. Okay, so any question you can come look for me after that.